Paris on Politics. Is the CPD ready for the DNC? Chicago's Inspector General says the work isn't done.
I think CPD's policies are perhaps out of line with what organizations like the International Association of Chiefs of Police have to say.
And a City of Dolton insider gives her take on this week's chaotic meeting and where the investigation of Tiffany Henyard goes next.
The residents are fed up. It's been ongoing. This is ongoing into our third year.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox Chicago.
Thanks for joining us. This is Paris on Politics. Each week we bring you analysis of the biggest political stories of the week, whether they come from the back rooms of City Hall or out in the street in the neighborhoods. And this week, the head of the U.S. Secret Service came to town to get a briefing on the Democratic National Convention as Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling had this message for protesters.
First Amendment protection is only there if you're not committing a crime. And you can be acting out peacefully, but still breaking the law. So if you sit in if you block a roadway or you block a venue, or you're on private property and you refuse to leave, those are crimes.
And now we're happy to be joined by City Inspector General Deborah Witzburg. Deborah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So your report concluded that CPD has improved its response to mass events since the chaos of 2020 that we all remember, but still has a way to go with crowd control and ensuring that rights are protected. What specifically does CPD need to work on?
So that's right. Back in 2021, we published a report that looked at the city's and CPD's response to the protests and unrest following the murder of George Floyd. We identified a number of areas where that response went wrong, went badly. And this report looks at whether there's progress, whether CPD has made improvements in some of the areas of concern that we identified. The bottom line is that they have. CPD has made some important progress in areas like planning. There are better coordinated plans with other city departments, supportive agencies. Those plans have been tested in things like tabletop exercises. Some of what we saw go wrong in 2020 had to do with ambiguities in and gaps in CPD's policies, particularly around mass arrest processing and use of force reporting. CPD has new draft directives which go to address some of those gaps and ambiguities. Those are important improvements. Those policies remain in draft form.
And Superintendent Snelling mentioned yesterday they were formulating a mass arrest policy for the DNC. So what does that policy need to entail?
A good mass arrest policy sets out clear guidelines for what sort of event qualifies as a mass arrest event. And in a mass arrest setting, the idea is that there are different mechanisms to process arrestees so that we can maintain a police presence on the scene of a mass arrest. Under ordinary circumstances, if a member of the police department arrests someone, they then have to take that person, they leave the scene, and they bring the arrestee to a police station for processing. In a mass arrest setting, the idea is we have other mechanisms to process arrestees so that the police can stay on the scene. We can maintain a police presence on the scene of a mass event. What we saw go wrong in 2020 had to do with ambiguities around what constitutes a mass arrest event, who can declare it, what's supposed to happen during that event, et cetera.
So it seems like they were caught off guard in 2020 and there was no one really minding the store here and in charge in terms of what their policy should be to control all that. You know, Superintendent Snelling said this week that, you know, First Amendment protections only go so far at the DNC, but there could be a mass arrest policy if you're doing things like peacefully protesting while blocking a roadway on private property. Do you agree that that should be the approach?
That's a question for the superintendent. The questions around strategy and tactics in the law enforcement response, those are decisions for the police department to make. Our question in this report looked at whether there are adequate controls in place to make sure that those law enforcement decisions are carried out in a constitutional and appropriate way.
You mentioned in your report constitutional, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment protections. Specifically, what are your worries in terms of protecting the folks' rights while they're protesting?
The questions we looked at here were whether CPD's training and policy documents include adequate protections around adequate reckoning with, as you say, the First and Fourth Amendment rights of lawful demonstrators. Particularly, we looked at policy provisions around the use of OC spray or pepper spray and containment techniques, things that are sometimes called kettling and encirclement.
Kettling is kind of where police kind of form a circle around protesters and maybe get them to back off a little bit, right?
There are a number of different kinds of encirclement techniques, and people call them different things, but that's the idea. It has to do with restricting movement of a large group of people. There are ways in which we read CPD's policies to be out of line, particularly on the pepper spray, the use of pepper spray against passive resistors in a group setting. I think CPD's policies are perhaps out of line with what organizations like the International Association of Chiefs of Police have to say and the practices of other major city police departments. Philadelphia is the one that we highlight in the report.
Superintendent Snelling initially said he disagreed with some of the findings in your report, but said this week that he had met with you. How did that meeting go? What came of that?
I sincerely appreciate Superintendent Snelling's thoughtful engagement on this. I mean it when I say that I think CPD has made meaningful progress. I think there are persistent concerns. I also think there is time to address them. And I think the superintendent is sincere in his belief that CPD is ready and prepared for an effective and appropriate law enforcement response.
In fact, he said that the two of you might hold a joint event at some point down the road. So it sounds like that you might be working together then, and he might be taking some of your recommendations.
We've had really thoughtful engagement. I really appreciate the department's engagement on this.
All right, I want to get to another report you put out a few weeks ago. Your office strongly recommended that the police department terminate or suspend officers with documented ties to right-wing extremist groups like the Oath Keepers. CPD did their own internal investigation, and they wound up not disciplining any of the officers, saying basically they couldn't. What do you think accounts for discrepancy in what you found and what their internal investigation found?
The issue of CPD members associating with extremist hate groups, anti-government organizations, this is something we've had a lot to say about. We will have a lot more to say about this going forward. The bottom line for me is that it looks crystal clear to me that the existing rules of conduct of the Chicago Police Department prohibit its members from associating with extremist anti-government hate groups. That looks very clear to me. I think that removing those people from the department is a critical step toward fostering legitimacy of the department, public trust in the department. I don't see a lot of room for ambiguity there. Some of those rules have been read differently in some of the police department's internal investigations. As I say, I think this is very much an ongoing conversation. The city simply cannot afford to get this issue wrong.
And maybe some of their justification is, all right, say an officer signed a sheet for one of these groups at some point. Does that mean this person is associating with this group, and are they on strong legal ground if they terminate this person, or might the union come and challenge that and be costly to the city?
Lots of disputes arise in police disciplinary cases where there is that risk. The greatest risk here, from my perspective, is continuing to allow people who associate with extremist hate groups to wear the uniform of the Chicago Police Department.
How endemic is this in the department, do you think?
Well, I don't know, nor will we ever if we are not seriously in the business of disciplining people who have associations which break the rules. CPD's rules of conduct prohibit conduct which brings discredit on the department, and the department's own rules make clear that that conduct might include associating with people of sort of ill repute, whose reputations might bring discredit on the department. Historically, the department has in fact used those rules to discipline members who, in the 1960s, for example, associated with the Ku Klux Klan. I think we are ill-equipped to say the rules can't be applied in that way when in fact they have historically been applied in just that way. We cannot ask people to trust a police department which permits extremism in its ranks.
So you said more to come on this then.
Yes.
We'll look out for that. Deborah Witzburg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next on Paris on Politics.
Dysfunction in Dolton will be speaking to a village trustee who went against Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
As elected officials, we should be organizing and making sure we're doing what's best for the community. But right now, it's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy.
How did the leader of a small village become known as the worst mayor in America?
She cannot continue to intimidate and gangster her way through this.
From showy billboards and expensive police bodyguards to Vegas trips and retaliation allegations, we bring you an inside look into Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the drama in Dolton. Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today.
A turning point in Dolton this week. Mayor Tiffany Henyard was rebuked by her Board of Trustees, which voted to reinstate an investigation from Lori Lightfoot. And then everything broke down. I was there for the chaos. Dolton trustees vote 4-2 to override Mayor Tiffany Henyard and reinstate Lori Lightfoot's investigation into town finances and a 2023 trip to Las Vegas. And immediately afterward, everything breaks down into chaos. Multiple sides shouting obscenities at each other. Cops had to step in and break it up. This is right after Henyard and her allies tried to block Lightfoot from getting up and making some brief remarks. Eventually, Lightfoot got her mic turned on, and here's a little bit of what she had to say.
Thank you. What I will say is that it's an honor to be working on behalf of the residents of Dolton. We have not arrested one.
You was once a mayor too. You should not even be disrespectful like that.
To stop us
That's
and
sad.
obstruct our ability to get to the facts.
Clear the room. Clear the room. Clear the room, guys. This means adjourn. Everybody out.
So 2 hours of absolute contention here. Lots of residents voicing their concerns. Earlier today, Mayor Henyard had the block in front of Village Hall cordoned off, making it very difficult for folks to get here, especially if you were senior or disabled. So Lightfoot's investigation, at least according to trustees, is back on now. It's going to focus into Henyard's spending of village resources as well as that 2023 trip to Las Vegas. And Henyard doesn't believe the investigation is legal. Now, residents lined up hours before the meeting. They got in, they packed the Village Hall, and they let their feelings about Mayor Henyard be known.
You're not going to understand until they put those cuffs on you. You're not going to understand it. You don't care. But baby, they on to you.
It is a shame that we, the public, can't ask you anything about the BMWs, the Range Rovers, all of that. It's like you're keeping all of that hidden from the taxpayers, and we pay for those.
You guys are following fiction, a made-up story. It is a smear campaign going on right now.
Henyard says she believes this investigation is not legitimate. The FBI is already probing the same things. And back here in the studio, we are joined by Village Trustee Kiana Belcher, one of the four that voted against Mayor Henyard to reinstate that investigation. First, what went through your mind when you saw that chaos?
I was a little disappointed, but the residents are fed up. It's been ongoing. This is ongoing into our third year, and we have contacted many officials over Dolton, the state's attorney, the attorney general, and it's like we can't get any help. And right now, the residents are fed up.
You know, that is one thing I heard from some of the residents, that where's Attorney General Kwame Raoul? Where's State's Attorney Kim Foxx? Where are they?
Yes, I don't know. We do know that residents have sent letters, made phone calls. The elected officials have sent letters, made phone calls. We're not getting any help.
Well, you are getting some help from former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. You and your colleagues voted to reinstate this investigation that Lightfoot's going to do. So what is she going to have the authority to look into?
So the ordinance covers the 2023 trip to Las Vegas. It covers some ARPA funds, some financial information, just because we believe that there's a lot of misappropriations of funds and commingling. And it was brought to us that an internal investigation was done with the allegations of the trustee that is accused of the misconduct, but the board never received anything. We want documentation because we may be at a point where the citizens and the board can press charges.
Press charges? Like, well, what kind of charge? Because, you know, one thing the citizens also say is they're angry at the police chief, her hand-picked police chief, who just kind of protects her. So how are you going to bring law enforcement into this?
Well, that's why we're working with former Mayor Lori Lightfoot, because if we can get documentation knowing that there has been some misappropriations and legal, that we have proven facts, then we may be able to do some things.
Would this be like a lawsuit?
A lawsuit, or if we can go criminal, we'll do it.
So criminal charges. We do know, though, that she is facing a criminal investigation from the FBI. What do you know about this investigation? She's been subpoenaed for many documents.
Yes, all we have just know what the public knows, really, that the federal subpoenas have come down, and in a lot of those subpoenas, they're asking about financial issues and misconduct and kickbacks. So there's a lot of things that's going on.
And if folks, I urge them to watch the Drama in Dolton piece that we have on our Fox Local app. Dane Placco has reported on a lot of this stuff. The trip to Vegas that she billed as economic development, other trips that she's bringing her bodyguards on, billing the taxpayers for, cars, security detail. What other things do you want people to know about some of this possible misconduct?
Actually, if you want to say theft of land, that ice rink that was paid by the citizens, $1.3 million, that wasn't budgeted, but it never was approved by the board to even build on our property. That's Village of Dolton property. So when you build on Village of Dolton property, you need approval. So that's
so $1.3 million ice rink was never voted on.
No.
She just kind of unilaterally decided to go forward on it.
Yes.
There's also a cancer charity that Dane has reported about where it seems like those funds have been misappropriated. What do you know about that?
So I do know that the township, which is not the village, the township voted to have $10,000 paid into the charity, and all the agents on the charity and officers are people that work for her directly within her circle. And we don't know. That's another thing that we're waiting for the Attorney General, because there was a date that they supposed to turn in some documents, and nobody's never heard anything else about it.
You talked about her other role, more than $200,000 she makes a year as the supervisor for Thornton Township, so the dual role there. Do you? What is your relationship with like with Mayor Henyard? Do you talk at all? Is she listening? I was there, and everyone, kind of aired their grievances about her, and she looked down the whole time like she wasn't listening to any of it.
She doesn't listen. We don't have a relationship outside of coming into the village on first Monday of the meeting and actually trying to conduct business. It's just hard because as elected officials, we should be organizing and making sure we're doing what's best for the community. But right now, it's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy.
All right, very interesting. Dictatorship of 21,000 down there in Dolton, just south of Chicago. Village Trustee Kiana Belcher, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Chicago Sports Insiders.
I am so excited. This is gold right now. It's gold.
Streaming now on your smart TV at Fox 32 on Fox Local, your home of the Bears team.
Every Bears game will be must-see TV.
Following every step of a historic season.
Hardcore on three. 1, 2, 3.
Download Fox Local and get in the game now.
Touchdown, Bears!
Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms and start watching today.
Also this week, Governor Pritzker signed the state's $53 million budget with new tax money from sports betting companies and new spending for education. No new spending on the Bears, of course. Expectedly, the budget got pushed back from Republicans, but also from State Comptroller Susana Mendoza, a Democrat who says she wanted cuts across the board. And here's a little bit of what the governor said this week.
This idea that you can just go across the board and cut 5% of the budget and not have a very deleterious effect on people all across the state. I'm willing to talk with anybody about good ideas for how to tighten up our budget to make sure that we're being efficient and spending money well and making cuts. Happy to talk about all that. But you've got to have specific ideas, because this idea that you're going to cut across the board, what do you want to cut? You want to cut education by 5%? You want to cut health care across the board? What is it exactly that you want to cut? So it's easy to make these proclamations, usually Republicans make, about across-the-board cuts.
The plan includes $350 million in new money for public schools across the state, $187 million for the migrant crisis, in addition to $400 million in migrant health care. Paying for it, that'll come from $200 million in new taxes on sports gambling and $526 million in capping the amount of money businesses can write off. The document was passed largely on a party line vote, and today Governor Pritzker said he believes the state is on the right track.
We balanced the budget for 6 years in a row now. We paid down all of our short-term debt. Even outside agencies, credit rating agencies, and the civic committee, civic federation, others that look at what the state is doing, what we've been doing in our administration, say we're in a much better situation now than we've been in many years.
The situation not so rosy for the Bears. The General Assembly did not take up any legislation related to public funding for a new domed lakefront stadium. Senate President Don Harmon explains why the Bears failed to move the ball.
There's really no appetite to put public taxpayer dollars into sports stadiums benefiting billion-dollar franchises. And to date, no one has made a compelling argument that this is good for the city or good for the state, and not just good for the Bears or the White Sox.
He's an Illinois sports legend.
Where I come from, it's about basketball, it's about getting back to the game.
From a historic championship run.
Y'all ain't just teammates, y'all brothers.
To training the next generation of ballers.
What was it like being on Sports Illustrated, the Jersey Pop photo?
They should have put our whole team on there.
CYD Brown is Chicago built.
Not scared of nothing, love challenges.
Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms.
This swag we have in Chicago is we do it the best.
Here's your preview of Drama in Dolton. Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local.
Don't nobody know nothing.
Tiffany Henyard certainly isn't shy about attracting attention. Here she is starting a Dolton Village board meeting dressed like the Wesley Snipes character in the movie New Jack City, later punctuating her political points with the help of her own DJ.
Every single resident, pay me what you owe me. Thank you, DJ.
Henyard's picture and name adorn virtually every public posting, both from Dolton, where as mayor she makes $46,000 a year, and in Thornton Township, where as the elected supervisor she collects more than $200,000 a year. But for all that money, Henyard's tenure at both has been chaotic, with firings, scandals, and a legal battle with the Dolton trustees over spending. So last fall, Henyard did something that would seemingly generate some good publicity, helping establish the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation to help breast cancer patients. And on the very day the charity was chartered, it received a huge donation, $10,000, from the Thornton Township Board, which Henyard presides over.
Taxpayer money shouldn't be paid into those types of things.
Stephanie Wiedemann is the former Thornton Township Chief of Staff, whom Henyard fired shortly after taking over in March of last year.
It almost felt like a takeover, and a very aggressive one at that.
Since her firing, Wiedemann has been documenting township spending and says she's stunned by the taxpayer dollars funneled into Henyard's charity, especially this.
We got 10 days. We're going 196 miles.
Last October, Henyard led a delegation of Dolton and Thornton Township employees and political supporters on a march to Springfield to promote her breast cancer charity, which she documented on her Facebook page.
We're walking through Dolton. All right, we're in Brightwood now. We are in Godly now. We in Bloomington, baby.
I can pretty much map out their entire Springfield trip on the township credit cards.
That's right. Henyard billed thousands of dollars in hotel rooms and meals during the trip to Thornton Township and Dolton credit cards.
Want to see more? Catch the whole documentary on your smart TV at Fox 32 on Fox Local. To get Fox Local on your smart TV, search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today.
And be sure to tune in next week. Governor Pritzker will sit down with me one-on-one for Paris on Politics. That's next Friday at 10. For now, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. So long.